The WNBA finds itself engulfed in a veritable wildfire, with players, coaches, and even former executives openly voicing their discontent, and the league is finally feeling the intense, unyielding heat of public scrutiny. The sudden and troubling sidelining of Caitlyn Clark, the transcendent phenom who arrived promising a glittering new era for women's basketball, has ignited a firestorm of whispers regarding potential lawsuits and exposed a deep-seated rot within the very core of the league's operations. Her injury is not merely a setback. It serves as a blaring, inescapable wake-up call to team owners, the Players Association, and league officials. A stark, chilling reminder that all the unprecedented fanfare, all the fervent public interest, and all the newfound attention could dissipate into thin air overnight. This precarious situation forces a critical, dramatic question to the forefront. How far is the WNBA truly willing to go to silence or marginalize the very player they've been so aggressively cashing in on since her highly anticipated debut? The league's future, once brimming with an almost unimaginable potential, now hangs precariously in the balance. Caitlyn Clark, a name synonymous with collegiate basketball greatness, has always been one to never back down from a challenge. During her storied career at Iowa, she didn't just rewrite the record books. She fundamentally transformed the landscape of women's basketball, igniting a cultural phenomenon that pulled in millions of dedicated fans and elevated women's hoops into a primetime television spectacle. Her arrival in the WNBA was met with a tidal wave of anticipation, with everyone bracing for an explosion of fireworks, not just from her unparalleled on-court game, but from the sheer, electric excitement she was expected to generate for a league that, frankly, desperately needed a miracle. And for a fleeting period, it worked beyond anyone's wildest dreams. Attendance figures exploded, shattering previous records, and television ratings soared to unprecedented heights. Clark, incredibly, was responsible for an astonishing 26.5% of all WNBA economic activity last season alone, including a massive surge in merchandise sales, skyrocketing ticket revenues, and record-breaking television viewership. She had been an Iron Woman, appearing in an astonishing 185 consecutive games between her illustrious career at Iowa and her initial, impactful time with the Indiana Fever, never missing a single one. Yet, instead of the red carpet welcome and protective environment one might expect for such a transformative figure, Clark was shockingly met with a barrage of elbows, an unmistakable attitude, and outright hostility from the moment she stepped onto the professional court. This wasn't just about basketball. It quickly became intensely personal. Now, with Clark unexpectedly sidelined for at least 2 weeks due to injury, a crucial, multi-million-dollar question hangs heavy in the air. Can the WNBA truly maintain this astonishing momentum without its undisputed star? Can the league continue to pack arenas and draw record ratings when its Golden Goose, the very engine of its recent surge, is grounded? The stakes for the WNBA's continued growth and relevance have never been higher. From the instant Caitlyn Clark hit the professional floor, every single matchup felt less like a basketball game and more like a grueling gauntlet. Defenders weren't simply guarding her. They were bodying her with an aggressive, almost predatory intensity that belonged in a mixed martial arts cage match, not a professional basketball game. She endured relentless full-court pressure, flagrant off-ball hacks, and floor contact that seemed more suited for a rugby scrum. And where were the referees in all this? They were nowhere to be found, conspicuously absent from their duty to enforce the rules fairly. Contact that would have instantly drawn a whistle for virtually any other top-tier player received nothing for Clark. Time and again, she was forced to simply grit her teeth, push through the pain, and endure. The referees, it seemed, had glaringly exposed their hand, acting with an almost chilling indifference. The world was watching the blatant bias and egregiously missed calls, yet the officials appeared unconcerned, almost determined to impose their will against the Fever, no matter the cost to the game's integrity. There's a palpable sense that a deeper, more insidious agenda against Caitlyn Clark is at play. All the while, The league, with a wearying predictability, peddled the same tired, dismissive line. She just needs to adjust. But this begs the fundamental question: why is the onus always on her to change? Why is Caitlyn Clark, the only star athlete in this league, continually told to toughen up, while every other prominent player appears to be protected like precious crown jewels, seemingly immune to such relentless, unchecked aggression? The double standard is not just evident, it's glaring. Then, with an almost chilling inevitability, came the injury. After logging monstrous minutes, often upward of 35 minutes a night in relentless, high-intensity games, Caitlyn Clark was officially ruled out with a left quad strain, sidelined for a minimum of 2 weeks. Predictably, many critics and established voices within the league dismissed the mounting complaints, asserting that new fans simply didn't understand the WNBA's traditionally physical style of play. However, for a vast and growing number of observers, this was clearly more than just a matter of new fans being unfamiliar with the game. It was an undeniable, escalating issue. This injury wasn't merely a minor setback. It was a devastating gut punch to the Indiana Fever's playoff aspirations and a massive, incalculable loss for the entire WNBA, which had been basking in her unprecedented star power. For a significant segment of the rapidly expanding fan base, this didn't feel like a freak accident at all. It felt like the chilling, predictable price of systemic neglect, the inevitable end result of a season's worth of unchecked, aggressive play against her, exacerbated by a league that appeared to tragically fail in its fundamental responsibility to protect the very player who was, by all accounts, single-handedly keeping the lights on and driving the league's newfound economic vitality. This wasn't some unavoidable twist of fate. It was a disaster that, in hindsight, could have been completely dodged. What made the sting of her absence even more acutely painful was the league's deafening, almost complicit silence. The WNBA uttered not a single word about the relentless beatings Caitlyn Clark had been enduring game after game. There are no official statements, no apologies, no expressions of concern. Just another name unceremoniously added to a burgeoning injury list. But this wasn't just any name. This was the undisputed face of the WNBA's new era, benched not because she lacked the toughness to handle the heat, but because the very system designed and tasked to shield her from such aggression chose, with baffling indifference, to look the other way. The perception is that the league, through its inaction, actively fostered an environment where its most valuable asset was left vulnerable and unprotected. Even those closest to the action, the players themselves, subtly hinted at the escalating issue. Kelsey Mitchell, Clark's own teammate on the Indiana Fever, subtly yet pointedly encouraged her to heed her body's warnings. A quiet, knowing nod to the undeniable fact that Caitlyn was constantly pushing through pain and physical duress that most professional athletes would immediately step aside from. Fans ever watchful noticed prominent media outlets, once hesitant to directly criticize the league, began to highlight the troubling pattern. And now, the burning question intensifies. Why was the league's brightest, most commercially viable star left so incredibly exposed? And who, precisely, stands to gain from her absence? Delving deeper into the WNBA's officiating reveals a profoundly troubling and systemic reality. The referees are not just inexperienced. They are in many cases shockingly underqualified for the level of competition they are overseeing. Some officials have made an alarming leap directly from high school courts straight into the intense environment of the WNBA, bypassing crucial developmental stages in leagues like college basketball or the NBA G League. These are not seasoned professionals with years of high-level experience under their belts. They are, more often than not, still learning the complex ropes of professional officiating while simultaneously overseeing the most high-stakes, highest-profile games the league has ever seen. This glaring lack of experience is glaringly evident, particularly when it comes to managing the WNBA's most talked-about and scrutinized player, Caitlyn Clark. And the rabbit hole, disturbingly, continues to go deeper. These officials, it turns out, are not making calls based solely on their independent judgment or the observable action on the court. Lurking ominously behind the scenes is a powerful competition committee that appears to be dictating precisely how games should be officiated. This committee is not composed of impartial, unbiased arbiters of the game. Rather, it comprises coaches, general managers, and various stakeholders, individuals with clear, often substantial, vested interests in specific game outcomes or the promotion of a particular style of play. This is far from mere speculation. Multiple league insiders have confirmed its existence and influence in various interviews. Referees, it is alleged, are being explicitly instructed on the precise level of physicality to permit, which types of fouls to prioritize, and what overall style of play aligns with the league's broader brand image. Not necessarily what constitutes fair or equitable officiating based on the rulebook. Caitlyn Clark's dynamic, fast-paced, and perimeter-oriented presence on the court fundamentally disrupts this carefully curated status quo. She introduces a new tempo, garners unprecedented, almost overwhelming media attention, and brings a spotlight that profoundly unsettles the existing system and its preferred, more physical, and often slower game. The chilling consequence? She faces an undeniable, disproportionate amount of punishment on the court without the consistent, much-needed protection she rightfully deserves from the officials. Contact that would instantly trigger whistles in the faster-paced NBA or even intense college games is routinely and bafflingly dismissed by WNBA referees. No calls, no justice, just a frustrating, almost defiant silence. And when Clark, understandably seeking an explanation, attempts to engage with officials, she is consistently met with an icy, dismissive indifference. This isn't paranoia on the part of players or fans. The bias is systemic and tragically evident. Time and again, Clark endures blatant, uncalled hits and aggressive play, while her slightest, often incidental contact, paradoxically, results in immediate fouls being called against her. Coach Stephanie White, clearly exasperated, attempted to challenge one such egregious instance during a critical game. However, an obscure and little-known rule blocked her. She lacked a full timeout, possessing only a reset timeout. Consequently, the officials remained shielded from review and accountability, while Clark and her team were left vulnerable. This kind of convoluted, inconsistently enforced rule doesn't merely cost games. It deeply erodes trust between players, coaches, and the officiating crew, and, by extension, the league itself. This isn't about isolated errors or subjective interpretations. It's about a fundamentally flawed structural problem where referees seemingly answer not to the core principles of the game or the tenets of fairness, but rather to concealed, vested interests. The undeniable perception is that Caitlyn Clark is being systematically targeted, not just by opposing defenders employing excessive physicality, but by a system desperate to control the narrative and shape the league's image, rather than safeguard its most valuable and marketable asset. The chilling realization for the WNBA is stark. The only player capable of consistently selling out arenas and driving record viewership is now potentially out for an extended period. What, precisely, is the league going to do now that their most significant draw is sidelined by what many perceive as their own inaction? The more information that comes to light, the clearer and more damning the picture becomes. The officiating crisis in the WNBA isn't accidental. It appears to be, at least in part, intentional or at the very least, a consequence of systemic neglect. While the league may attempt to downplay the severity of the issue, the backlash from all corners is intensifying at an alarming rate. Fans, once passively watching, are now actively vocalizing their outrage. But it's not just the fans raising concerns. Players, coaches, and respected analysts from across the nation are openly and unequivocally criticizing the officiating, with Caitlyn Clark squarely at the epicenter of this controversy. This isn't about seeking favoritism for one player. It is about demanding fundamental fairness and consistency in officiating for all. When referees consistently and conspicuously overlook blatant fouls on a star player who single-handedly draws record-breaking attention and viewership, people, quite rightly, begin to demand accountability. One of the most glaring and widely discussed moments occurred during the high-stakes Fever versus Liberty showdown. With the game hanging precariously in the balance, Clark drove to the basket and was clearly, undeniably fouled by Natasha Cloud. The contact was so evident that replays from every conceivable angle confirmed it, leaving no room for doubt. Yet in that crucial moment, there was no whistle, no call. Game over. Clark and her teammates, understandably incredulous, immediately confronted the officials, desperately seeking an explanation. They received none. The officials simply, dismissively, walked away. This sent a clear, disturbing message, not just to Clark and her teammates, but to every single viewer watching. The whistle doesn't blow the same for everyone, and the rules of the game are seemingly applied unequally. This incident was not an isolated event. It was one in a distressing pattern. Earlier, Coach Stephanie White attempted to challenge a questionable foul called against Lexi Hull, but due to an obscure and widely misunderstood rule, she was prevented from initiating the challenge because she lacked a full timeout. Fans, largely unfamiliar with this technicality, assumed White had simply erred in her coaching. In reality, her hands were tied by a convoluted system seemingly designed to shield officials from scrutiny and accountability. The frustration has now spread far beyond the confines of the Indiana Fever locker room. WNBA superstar Britney Griner famously halted a live halftime interview on national television to vehemently criticize the referees, a shocking and unprecedented display of player frustration. Other coaches have openly labeled the officiating as disrespectful during post-game press conferences, expressing their anger and bewilderment. These grievances are not merely emotional outbursts. They are strategic critiques. Players and coaches are highlighting a pervasive issue. The rules are not being applied uniformly, and this alarming inconsistency is fundamentally disrupting the rhythm and integrity of the game. Yet, the WNBA, with baffling stubbornness, seems largely unresponsive, dismissing the criticism as growing pains from new fans who are supposedly unfamiliar with the league's traditionally physical style. But that rationale is a hollow excuse that simply doesn't hold water. The core issue isn't physicality. It's the profound lack of consistency in how that physicality is officiated. The moment Caitlyn Clark steps onto the court, the rule book appears to change specifically for her. She is officiated differently, faces significantly more aggressive and uncalled challenges. And when she perseveres through it all, the officials mysteriously overlook the physical toll until, eventually, her body succumbs to the cumulative impact. Now, sidelined with a quad strain, Caitlyn Clark embodies a league-wide controversy that refuses to dissipate or be silenced. Those speaking out are not simply defending Clark. They are, in a powerful, collective voice, unveiling a deeply ingrained culture within the WNBA that appears to reward silence and penalize excellence. Caitlyn Clark never sought special treatment or preferential calls. All she ever asked for was the same standard of officiating and protection every other professional player in the league deserves. Yet, the more she excels, the more resistance she encounters, not just from her opponents on the court, but from the very system ostensibly meant to safeguard her. The backlash from the public, the media, and even within the league itself is not waning. It's intensifying dramatically. The WNBA made a colossal miscalculation. They profoundly underestimated a powerful force, the rapidly growing and incredibly passionate fan base that Clark brought with her. These fans, who witnessed her unprecedented 185 consecutive games without missing a single one in college and her early professional career, are now watching with a critical, unforgiving eye. They witnessed her being slammed to the floor without recourse. They saw the referees conspicuously convene, then bafflingly walk away without a whistle. They noticed the scoreboard inexplicably shift, not because the superior team prevailed, but because someone in stripes seemingly chose to avert their gaze at a critical moment. Now, these millions of fans are not just angry, they are mobilizing. Legal pressures are reportedly mounting. prominent media outlets are delving deeper into the inconsistencies and alleged biases within the league's officiating. And conversations that once occurred quietly in private are now making explosive headlines, laying the entire system bare for public inspection. For far too long, accountability within the WNBA has operated as a closed, self-serving circuit. Referees reporting to committees, committees answering to various stakeholders, and virtually no one ultimately accountable to the broader public or the fans. But that insular circuit has been dramatically disrupted by the blinding spotlight that Caitlyn Clark brought with her. She didn't actively seek controversy. She didn't set out to be the reluctant face of a player-led movement. But when the whistles inexplicably fell silent and the elbows and aggressive physical play against her kept coming without consequence, the league, through its own actions and inactions, effectively cast her into that prominent, unwilling role. Now, every biased call against her, every unwarranted foul she endures, and every crucial no-call fuels a rapidly escalating fire that is well beyond the league's containment. This isn't about granting favoritism to a single player. It is about preserving the fundamental integrity of the game itself. Because what is undeniably happening to Caitlyn Clark sends a chilling and unacceptable message to every aspiring young star and every young girl watching from the stands. Even if you shatter records, even if you make history, the very system designed to support you might still penalize you for simply shining too brightly. That is not merely unjust, it is fundamentally unsustainable. A professional sports league that consistently fails to protect its most valuable stars risks losing them. One injury, one controversy, one unacknowledged foul at a time. If the WNBA doesn't critically and immediately examine its officiating practices, its leadership structure, and the covert forces potentially influencing the game, then the whispers of lawsuits might just be the very beginning of a much larger, more damaging crisis. Because this issue isn't going away, Caitlyn Clark's fiercely loyal fans won't let it. The increasingly scrutinizing media won't let it. And most importantly, the truth is already out in the open for everyone to see. The only question remaining is, will the league act decisively before it's truly too late to save its own